Welcome back. In this lecture, we move from skills to structure. What this means is, how do we understand how motivational interviewing unfolds as a guided clinical process? As you watch, pay attention to how each stage builds on the next and how some of the stages are not linear but cyclical. Okay. Another thing you should note is you will find a practice exercise for this in the workbook linked below. You also need to download the case study between the client and the counselor so that you can follow the process in a very practical way. So today we are looking at the four processes of change within motivational interviewing. So motivational interviewing in action, the four processes of change. Let's do this together. Without structure, conversation is just scattered conversation. But with structure, change is intentional. And so when you have skills, these are like a tools that you're using. But then when you have processes, it's like a roadmap. So you may have the tools, but if you don't know where to put what, it won't work. So for example, you have a screwdriver. And what you need is actually a monkey wrench. And so while you have a tool, because you don't have a roadmap, it doesn't make it really beneficial. The closest you can say is, oh, I have a tool. And so how do these processes happen within motivational interviewing in a way that helps a client change? We have these four processes. The first is engaging, and I'll walk you through each one of them, give you examples, and then the case study you downloaded, you will follow through because you will have conversations. I will stop you and ask you what you are identifying. And let's see if you can do that. So we have engaging, we have focusing, we have evoking, and we have planning. What do all these things mean? I intentionally created this as a cyclical thing because you can actually move back and forth. MI is very flexible and it's not rigid. And so when you look at this one, you can move from engaging to focusing. And as you're coming back to evoking, you could probably stay here for a bit and then you go back here. And then you come to planning and then you come here and then you come here. So don't look at it as, oh, I have to do engaging alone. And then after that, focusing comes and then engaging is done. And then you go to evoking and then engaging and focusing are done. And then you go to planning and you don't need evoking again. You don't need evoking again. You don't need focus. No, they are all they move back and forth. And that's the beautiful thing about motivational interviewing. So, what is engaging? Engaging is the initial foundational process of building a collaborative, empathetic, and safe therapeutic relationship. The focus of this stage is to establish rapport, show unconditional positive regard, and understand the client's perspective. You also need to create a very non-judgmental environment that supports their autonomy to change. So if you pay attention to the language, it's like we are combining ethics with Rogerian therapy. Okay, I'm building a relationship. I'm creating psychological safety. I'm establishing trust. The fact that you tell somebody, trust me, doesn't mean they will trust you. It is what you do consistently, how you speak about them, how you speak about others in their presence, how you just your state of being will let a client know whether they can trust you or not. And don't think you can hide or trick a client. They really are smart. And so if you approach them with that posture of curiosity, posture of humility, it makes it easy for clients to trust you. And the engaging process is actually where many therapists rush. And in your rushing, you lose your clients. Okay, so what you need to do is to build strong therapeutic relationships. And these strong therapeutic relationships are very necessary for positive outcomes. You also need to create safe, confidential environment built on trust. And so if you don't do that, you lose your clients. What you do is to create non-judgmental environment, and that's what clinically we call therapeutic alliance. What happens here is you do this by active listening, empathy, validation, transparency, and demonstrating clinical competence. Trust is built gradually. Hear me again. Trust is built gradually and is often accelerated by acknowledging a client's hesitation, being consistent, and displaying professional humility. Therapists create psychological safety also by fostering non-judgmental, empathetic, and so there's a lot of non-judging, there's empathy, there's a lot of consistency in what you do. So a client is coming to you and they are seeing you as a safe haven or a secure base. You know how when children go out to play with their friends, they always turn back to see, is mommy there? Is daddy there? When I come back, will they trust me again? And in play therapy or working with children, we call that the circle of security. A client, adult clients, also need that. And you demonstrate that by showing a lot of empathy, by respecting their hesitation, by not rushing them. When you're able to do these things, it allows the clients to feel accepted. It reduces their defenses and it encourages vulnerability because that is when growth actually happens. So, what does engaging look like as you're using your empathy, your reflection, your curiosity, your non-judgmental posture? How does it really look like? So, it's a process of establishing a constructive working relationship with a client. And the aim is to address any doubts or concerns they may have about consultation, whether they trust you, whether this is going to be useful, and so on and so forth. So engagement should address those unspoken questions and act as a foundation for the rest of the consultation. I've asked some really weird questions of clients. I didn't even realize I was using engaging in motivational interviewing. But I once worked with this adult female client who had changed multiple therapists before they came to me. And she was Caucasian, I was black. So I had to hey, that's the elephant in the room. So I had to ask her, it's like, how does it feel like to have a black, not an American, an African, who clearly speak with a non-American accent? And so we had that conversation. Then it takes away the awkwardness because in that moment, I demonstrated vulnerability. And so in bringing that into the room, it doesn't mean tell your clients every gory detail about your life, but how do you state what is there in a way that shows humility, that shows vulnerability, that shows congruence, because you can't give what you are not. And that's very, very important in this profession that we are in. Engagement reduces resistance. Let's see if we can walk through this. So a client says, I don't even know why I'm here. A typical non-MI response, you need to take this seriously. Seriously? But if you want to use an MI response, you reflect. And this is what you say. You are not sure this is even helpful for you. Because I told you before, clients are smart. And the fact that they're probably coming to you because a friend suggested it or somebody they respect or somebody they love doesn't mean that you get to speak to them anyhow. Again, congruence. If you are a naturally disrespectful person, you will lose your clients. When I say disrespectful, it doesn't mean or either the use or the absence of please or thank you. It's a posture of a heart. It's a posture of the heart. This is where you look at your clients, not with your human eyes, but with the eye of your heart. This is when you listen to the client, not with your ears, but with your heart. So a lot of the things we do sits within the heart. The heart is where the emotions are, your intellect is. How are you valuing the client in a way that you respect the step they took to come spend time with you? Please download the workbook as well as the practice exercises so that when we get to the longer ones, you'll be able to follow, okay? And while you're doing that, just subscribe to the channel so that if future videos come up, it will just pop up in your feed. So you are not sitting there waiting, oh, am I going to get a new one? All right. The second process is focusing. Focusing is when you clarify direction, when you agree on what to talk about, and when you narrow the conversation. So it is the words, process in MI conversations, um, where the clinician and the client move from a general supportive conversation to a specific goal agenda. Without focus, the conversation drifts. You remember in a slide or so ago, I told you that with focus, there's intentionality, intentional change. So is a what process in MI conversations where you as the clinician and the client move from a general supportive conversation to a specific goal or agenda or behavior change. I will give you examples in the subsequent slides, okay? Focusing is not imposed by the professional. Rather, it is a collaborative negotiation of where both parties agree on as a target for change. So, smoking less, or improving diet, or adhering to medication. A key part of focusing is agenda mapping. So, what you do in agenda mapping is you narrow down multiple potential options for change to one, and the one has to be manageable. You also use directional conversation, which provides anchor for the session. And this allows you, the clinician, to steer the conversation towards change rather than just chatting about the status quo. Another thing to avoid is premature focus. So we call this premature focus trap. What it does is it makes the practitioner not rush into a specific goal before the client is ready or interested. Otherwise, this triggers resistance. So people talk about three types of focusing. I don't know if I'm going ahead of myself, but let me talk about this briefly and then we'll delve deeper when the time becomes necessary. So the three types of focusing, there's one called following. Following means letting the client set the direction entirely, which is good for identifying what is most important to them. The second one is guiding. This is collaborative, where you, the clinician, you offer options for the focus while respecting the client's autonomy. And this best aligns with MI. Then the third one is directing. This is where the practitioner or the therapist sees the conversation directly. This is actually rarely used in pure MI unless it's required by safety or high stakes setting. So if there's life and death or safety, this is when you use directing. Um, Focus is used when the topic is unclear. Focus is used when the topic is already clear and throughout the session. So it's not like I use this and I don't use this. So you know what? The second process is focusing. And focusing is super critical because it prepares the ground for evoking, which is the third one. So evoking draws out the client's why for chain talk related to specifically agreed upon focus. So it's a bit like when you want to plant maize. You can't just go stick it in the ground. You have to prepare the ground and make sure that it's the weeds there have been taken away, it's prepped. So I'm looking for an appropriate expression. It's like you prepare the land. You prepare the land. That's why you dig out all the hardness before you put the maize there. So see focusing as doing just that for the client. Let's see if we can. So for example, a client who feels like, I don't feel like coming or juggling family expectations. So a question you ask that is focus related question will be, what would you like to work on today? So you give them the autonomy. And then what feels most important right now? Sometimes when clients talk with us, we feel like, oh, this is super important. But when you ask, what do you think is important may not necessarily be important for them. So focusing, what would you like to work on today? And this is a good start for therapy. And as they talk and talk and talk, we can gently step in and say, what feels most important right now? And they will let you know. I remember, let's see, when I used to teach in Oregon, we were hoping that they could ask this kind of question because it leads to treatment planning. Because without knowing what the client wants to work on, you can't do any treatment planning with them. And because of insurance and things like that, by the second session, you should have had some treatment planning because that's the only reason insurance companies will pay you for the work you're doing. All right. The heart of MI is evoking. This is really cool. We evoke change, we don't push it. So evoking is the third and is considered the heart of the approach. It refers to deliberate strategic process of drawing out a client's own intrinsic motivations, reasons, and arguments for change. Rather than telling the client why they should change, an MI practitioner uses evoking to help the client to articulate their own why. Some of the principles used resists the writing reflex. So you avoid the urge to tell the client what to do or fix the problem for them, which often really triggers resistance. Instead, we use what we call elicit, provide, elicit. So if information must be shared, ask permission to share it and then ask for the client's thoughts. You also need to focus on autonomy. One of the things this process does is, as a therapist, you have this belief that the client already has the processes necessary for motivation or strength and resources for change. And so all you do, your whole aim in this evoking, is like you're acting like a investigator. So you're helping the client to uncover all these things. So you're driving out their motivation and then connecting it in such a way that it increases chain talk. And while you're doing that, you're exploring their values using reflection of content. You remember we talked about that in the um, video before this one. Now, what are some of the strategies that we use in um, evoking? Practitioners use scaling, like what we do in solution-focused brief therapy. So you use on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being nothing and 10 being the best. You explore motivation, you ask why the client is set at a certain level and what it would take to move higher. If you download the case study, you will see how the therapist uses evoking strategies. Okay, so an example is on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this change? And then you can follow up with why a lower number? Okay, this pulls out the chain talk. You'll find that in the case study. Okay. Another thing practitioners do is they connect potential change to the client's deeply held values, and that's reflection of meaning. Okay. And the life goals to identify discrepancies between their current behavior and their desired life. What therapists also do is they help clients connect their often conflicting behaviors to deeper held values, such as health, family, or autonomy. So a strategy to use, I know we talked about this in the slide before, is what are the most important things to you in your life? And then you can follow up with how does this problem or behavior fit in with that? So you are pulling whatever it is back to what they find valuable, what they hold as their core. What's another word for it? Core values in life? Yeah. Yeah. Let's read a piece of the case. So a client says, I know I should change my diet, but food is part of my family life. And so in using engaging, therapists will say food is deeply meaningful in your family. What concerns you most about your health right now? That is focusing, you remember? And then evoking will come across as what worries you about continuing this way? Client goes like, I don't want complications. And then we hit the fourth stage called planning. Okay, so what small steps feel possible? This is where you provide small early hints. Remember that it's a progressive process, so you can go back and forth, depending on what your client needs. Now, what is process? That is the fourth. What is the fourth process? That is planning. It refers to the stage where the focus shifts from why to change. And the change is how. Okay, so why do I want to change? How am I going to change? That is where planning comes in. It's collaborative. You realize that from the beginning, everything was very collaborative. So this is the collaborative development of a concrete action plan for behavior change. This occurs once the client is sufficiently motivated, committed, and ready to move forward. This means you can't rush it. You can't rush it. So When the change talk is strong, you move towards action and develop realistic steps. And I know that we've talked about realistic, but we always say you should use smart goals. You should use smart goals. So in developing a commitment from the client, you consolidate the commitment to change and then formulate a plan that the client is willing to implement. If you bring anything way out there, they may not. It might look like it's your own agenda. But if you collaborate with them, so they say, oh, I can do this, then if they say that's change. And so how can they do it? When do they do it? What small steps do they need to take to achieve that? What does planning look like? So what we say is the final optional stage, focusing on how to change, and it's initiated when the client show readiness. You realize you can also go to the one before and the one before and the one before. This is not fixed in stone or fixed in cement. So in planning, we do goal setting. We look at small steps that we can achieve that. You look at the client's intrinsic strengths. What is it the client is capable of doing? And it has to be client-led so they feel empowered. So what is it they have done before? And how can we replicate that so that they'll be able to do the change that they really desire? Now, when we talk about this, let's walk through a few things that we as clinicians do to boycott the whole thing. Okay. And when clients are not ready, we don't rush to plan. When we sense resistance, the language in MI is ambivalence. We shouldn't ignore it. We should stick with it and address it. It's like dig a little deeper, explore why that is happening. You are not doing that to coerce the client to do what you want, but you want to respect that either they are aware or they are not aware, but instinctively they are resisting something. So process that with them before, when they are ready, then you move on. Okay. Please don't do advice. My policy is I don't know how to live my own life. Either sometimes I make mistakes and I go like, why did I do that? So what makes me think I have the right to tell somebody how they should live their life? Okay, so tone down on the advising. And then another mistake we do is we talk more than we listen. When we're talking, we take the focus away from the client onto ourselves. And that's actually a violation of our ethics. So these are some common errors: rushing to planning, ignoring ambivalence over advising, and talking more than listening. This is where you will need the full case. Oh, okay, so it's the next slide. So we're going to go through this again. This is a client struggling with coming to therapy. So in engaging, a therapist can say something like, what has it been like deciding to come today? A client comes back and say, I almost didn't come. And so in using focusing, the therapist will say, so what made today important enough to show up? Because till you go through it, you wouldn't know how hard it is sometimes to even get out of bed and do what you need to do. And so when clients move up and come to you, it is huge. Okay. So a client says, I'm tired of feeling anxious. So something is happening that's making them want the change. And so in using reflection, which is a part of evoking, you say you want relief from the anxiety. The client will respond, yes, I can't keep living like this. And in planning, we say, what will be a small first step towards feeling better? Because like the solution focused people who talk about pre-therapy something strength. When clients reach out to you that they are coming to see you, between the time they reach out to you to when they actually come, they are hopeful enough to try fixing the problems themselves. And so this is where you connect with what they did before they saw you to make it easier to take it up. All right. Click on the link to download the full case study to help you identify the processes. Should I wait for you? You can pause the video and click that. So this is a client who is unhappy at work but scared to leave. And many people go through that because when you think of all the responsibilities you have, you can't just up and leave like that. Okay. So counselor says, it's good to see you again. How have things been since we last talked? Client, honestly, still the same. Work is draining me. Draining. Yeah, I wake up tired just thinking about going in. That sounds heavy to carry every day. It is, but I mean, I can't just quit. So this particular statement, what just happened there? What is a counselor doing when the counselor says, that sounds heavy to carry every day? Did you write the correct thing? Let's move on then. So counselor comes back and says, so part of you feels worn down and another part says quitting isn't really an option. Exactly. Huh. What do you think will be most helpful for us to start today? What skill are they using? What process is that? Then the client comes in, probably this job situation has been on my mind a lot. So counselor says, okay, let's stay with that. What is it about the job that feels most difficult right now? My boss, for one, and just no growth. I feel stuck, feeling stuck and not seeing a future there. Yeah, like I'm wasting my time. So when the counselor says, okay, let's sit with that. What is it about the job that feels most difficult right now? What is the counselor doing? What skill are they using? I won't tell you. This is where you get to go back if you've forgotten it. Don't just passively listen to this video lecture. Engage with it so that you'll be able to pick it up. And if you realize that, wait, I feel really aligned with motivational interviewing, be intentional about seeking supervision from somebody who uses it so that you can learn. Okay. Let's do a little bit of multiple choice exercises. Question one, which process comes first? Planning, evoking, engaging, focusing. What's your answer? I won't tell you. Evoking focuses on advice, motivation, diagnosis, history. Which one? Three, planning should begin immediately after engagement when change talk is strong at the end only. Four, focusing helps diagnose, direct conversation, and therapy build resistance. And five, which is a mistake, reflecting, asking open questions, rushing to solutions, affirming. If you chose C for question one, you are right. If you chose B for question two, you are right. If you chose C for question three, you're right. If you chose B for question four, you're right. And if you chose C for question five, you are right. How many did you get? Nobody is evaluating you, but it helps to know, okay? So to end, motivation interviewing is a skill that develops through deliberate practice. Please review the exercise and practice writing reflections daily, okay? Remember, you'll find practice exercise for this in the workbook linked below. Please subscribe to the channel so that you'll be notified immediately new teaching videos appear. I think that's what we have for today. Thank you very much for spending your time with me and making this work the way it is working. Keep learning, stay curious, stay humble, and let's make a difference together. Bye.